Hello and welcome to another episode of Rustacean Station. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I have a very interesting guest. This time I would say very special, very interesting this time. Julius Lungys. I think I probably said that wrong, but you'll correct me in a moment. He is a software engineer at Nikulipe. Again, probably have to help me with that one because that's a Lithuanian name, I believe. And also a maintainer of Vue, right? So I remember hearing about Vue a couple of years ago, and it kind of stuck out to me, but I felt like it's kind of been, I don't know, busy or maybe kind of fallen out of favor, but it seems like it's still going strong, which is good. So of course I reached out to the Discord community and I found you wanted to talk. So yeah, why don't we kind of flow over to you and you can kind of give your self-introduction and correct me where my Lithuanian is wrong.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here. So my name is actually pronounced Julius Lungys, but feel free to just call me Jules throughout the podcast. That's going to be fine. And the company's name, Nikulipe, is, I don't think it matters too much how you're going to pronounce it because it's actually not Lithuanian. You can find more about the company if you actually go on the Google and Google it. I'm not going to go too deep into that today.
Yeah, because we're here to talk about you, right? But I think it's also good to kind of hear more about you, YOU this time. So I know you're still rather new, and you don't really have that beginner kind of like where did this library come from? But I mean, can you talk more about like what is your understanding of you and like what's its core values?
So you is you in my view is honestly. It really resembles React from JavaScript world. So you have this ability to have your data inside of Rust and I guess in Wasm and directly immediately turn it into the things you want it to be turned into, like HTML wise, DOM wise. And it's just really nice to manage that. So use a core value is just, to bring a good framework that would be just as good as using plain JavaScript just inside of Rust with Rust benefits.
So like, why would I choose you when I could just choose React, right? I mean, if I'm building the front end, why don't I just stick with, things that people know about, right?
Well, the big benefit of just using you inside of production code, which I don't think there is much of it currently, is simply probably just to have the same language everywhere. So actually here in Nikulipe, for everything we use Rust. So our backend is Rust, all services are Rust, our front end is Rust. And you don't even imagine how nice that is when you can literally go to any engineer and you're going to be talking the same language. Also, I mean, obviously, all the benefits of Rust, like the borrow checking and the smart compiler, Clippy is super nice. And those are things that you might not get with JavaScript.
But the other thing too is I did see even on the U website, you guys also list that there's some slowness also to WebAssembly, but that's kind of part of the issue that's being worked on. I don't remember exactly what it was. Do you know what I'm talking about?
So performance-wise, U is actually doing still quite well. That is just more like a question of like, is Wasm faster than JavaScript? And currently just like, it is in some cases where you're like doing some big computation. But if you're just handling events and stuff like that, that's what they are probably mentioning of, that it is a bit slower when you call those APIs. So that can slow down things. But honestly, when you're working on the UI application, that won't matter too much. I don't know if that actually answers the question.
Yeah, I just remember reading on the U, so the website is uyeu.rs, and specifically on here they talk about, so Wasm is not yet a silver bullet. DOM APIs from WebSum are still slower than calling them from JavaScript, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that could be also partially, like I said, I'm not actually one of the original creators of Vue. I'm just helping out with the project, and I just joined only a half year ago. So I might not know all the intricate details. But thing is, how we currently manage events and things like that, we still go into JavaScript land even with Vue. So there are libraries like Wasm-pack and then even the higher level library WebSys that just allows you to call JavaScript, a literal JavaScript code just in Rust and use it inside Rust without any, external JavaScript file. So we do that. And you can even, if you go into U and let's say I want to handle an input of user, like some sort of text input, you're going to be still writing a event handler that takes in a JavaScript event, and then you actually, using WebSys, will probably take out the value out of the event. So that's a basic example of what you're doing there. And obviously that costs you because you're going to be calling JavaScript DOM API outside of Wasm.
So when you guys are writing this, so it's pretty interesting. So you guys are using Rust back to front, right? Everything is written in Rust. Is that right?
Yeah.
So do you actually have some code that you share across between the two places?
Oh yeah, we do. So like for me personally, one of the interesting parts of it is that like contracts between front end and back end. So usually you end up like creating same entities like on back end and front end for the REST API. And I remember GraphQL came in here, created by Facebook, and they said like, hey, here's a schema, and you're going to be able to like generate those types that you want, and that is going to be done for you. And here in this company now, you don't need any generation. You just use the same type. You just import it, So that's really nice. And some utility functions and stuff like that are really good as well to be reused.
So how are you guys actually managing your code, right? Are you just doing a bunch of crates for things that you can share and then somehow pulling it in from Git? Or how do you actually manage sharing code across?
We use Git. We use Git. We have like a GitHub. Like I think we use Fabricator, a fork of it at least. And we just do that. And we have like this one monorepo where we have, a cargo workspace, and we just have everything there.
Oh, okay. A cargo workspace. Okay. Yeah. I just been recently working with those. So you have a cargo workspace with all of your code together in one place, you're saying?
Yeah. Of course, you still need to do some mind juggling, to not import some sort of backend only things that you might accidentally put into Wasm, and then you might end up exposing it. So that you still are responsible for that. But if you structure the project clearly and properly express what can be imported where, you're going to be fine.
Now, is this any issues? Because maybe we can kind of roll back a little bit, right? Because I don't think many people we've had on before actually work with Wasm. Now, with Wasm, it's not like when you're compiling for a native system, right? It is another platform, but I think it's quite different, right? That when you compile things, there's definitely some kind of tweaks and things you have to use. It's not just a toolchain thing, right? There's quite a lot of ceremony,
So even if you go on U's website, there are like when getting started, I think there's like two sections here. There is a using trunk or using Wasm-pack. So if you're using trunk, that's just going to be your good old simple, just like a Webpack, just like, parcel, rollup. It's just a simple bundler that is all inside Rust. And you end up creating just one HTML file. And that HTML file is like the start of your all file structure that later on trunk, just when you build with trunk, it combines everything, collects everything, and just creates the Wasm file that you need, and also the JavaScript file that you need. But underneath it is doing a similar thing that you would be doing with Wasm-pack. So what you do with Wasm-pack, you just build your project, and you end up having this, I'm going to call it NPM, but it's not really hosted on NPM. It's just like, a node module, JavaScript node module that has Wasm code in it, and you just call that from your JavaScript. So with Wasm-pack, you probably are going to end up using, once again, rollup, parcel, Webpack. And you're going to have your JavaScript and HTML. And then in some place, you're going to end up calling that Wasm, which is going to, in use case, you're going to be telling it in which place it needs to render itself. And all from that point is taken over by you. But this is exactly how it's done, in React. It's just like a case of like switching languages from JavaScript to Wasm.
So you is also using some type of virtual DOM to do some kind of diffing before it does updates on the DOM?
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, that is an optimization probably. I can't really go too deep into this, but it's an expected thing that, even React has, Angular has, and usually quite a lot of frameworks have that.
So what about debugging this, right? If you have an error somewhere, how do you actually debug something like this?
So debugging support is probably, I want to say, not the best. So you don't have the benefit of, I'm just going to open this website and then just open DevTools inside my browser and just click create a breakpoint and get there. Because, you're going to be seeing Wasm code, and Wasm code is, it's not Rust, So you're going to be just logging everywhere if you want to actually properly debug everything. And you can both log, JavaScript things using websyslog, or there are like crates like log, or I think we have like Wasm log or something like that, community maintained libraries that work fine. And also like give you I think Wasm log even gives you a proper line of code where the log happened. So that's nice.
Yeah, I thought that I don't know, I know in JavaScript there's a way that you can, it's not a decompile, but when you compile it, you can compile some kind of existing file that can kind of go side by side and match up like the jumbled up JavaScript that's been minified to like readable source code. I forgot the name of that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's like source trees or something like that.
Source map. Source maps,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no WebAssembly source map.
Well, there probably is, but once again, it's WebAssembly. So I personally never actually go into like DevTools and inspect Wasm code. I'm only interested in Rust. So that's maybe just a personal thing, and I can't really answer properly, honestly. I never tried to properly debug Wasm, but like still keep in mind you're kind of dependent on debugging on the browser. You're like, there's like no, I don't know, like I would need to investigate this more.
Because I know that there's some have you ever heard of Krustlet before?
No, I haven't.
So I believe Krustlet is some kind of Kubernetes service, or I guess you wouldn't call it a service. You would call it some type of, I'm not even sure what to even call it. And it's able to execute WebAssembly as code on the server. I'm not too sure exactly how it all works.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, even with that, you're probably going to be missing the ability to call the DOM. So, and then that's already a limitation that might limit you.
Maybe we can kind of roll back a little bit. Like, what is WebAssembly and why should I really care about it?
Oh, you have the wrong person to ask that. Like I said, I'm just honestly I am a past JavaScript user. I'm going to say it like that. I have used React and I have worked with React in a job, and I just happened to like discover Rust. I loved it. And then I found a job, luckily, and somehow ended up doing the same thing with Rust. So I might not be in a good place right now to properly answer Wasm questions, WebAssembly.
Okay, but as somebody who's been a JavaScript developer, you even call yourself a former JavaScript developer, it sounds like you moved on and don't want to move back, I'm guessing. Why would you want to recommend somebody using Wasm over just plain JavaScript?
Well, I guess that's the thing. If you're making a front-end application, I would still say just use JavaScript. But if you have a project where you actually have a backend that you're writing in Rust, I think it's prime time to actually just switch on into Vue and maybe other frameworks that use Rust, because considering the fact that we have websys, you're not like really limited by just only things that Wasm has. Like you can actually still go out of that bubble and go call your JavaScript DOM API, and that's fine. And since it's just a small bit, as it evolves, you're going to be refactoring it and probably getting rid of it. So like you mentioned that thing we have on our website about Wasm being slow. I think I haven't gone fully into that issue, but I believe it's like a talk of how they're going to create the same DOM APIs using Wasm so that you would not call JavaScript. And I think once that day comes, you don't really have a good, you don't have a good reason to just, keep using JavaScript when Wasm is there, with a really smart compiling language like Rust, besides the fact that like maybe the what's the word? Well, basically just like, ecosystem. There we go. Like React has a huge ecosystem. So you might be staying because of that. But otherwise, just language-wise, I think Rust is worth it.
Well, what about the ecosystem of Wasm within Rust? Is that still pretty good support?
I mean, you just compile your Rust to Wasm, so that is really good support. But I'm going to turn that question upside down a little, and we're going to go into you. What's the support for you? And by ecosystem, I always mean that, like, am I going to get a library that has, all the components I need? Like, for example, I want to have a stylized button of, like, material with the Google's material styling, and in a way that is, like, easy to handle inside you. And we have community libraries like that, but they're not like all that complete. So we really need maintainers. Like we want community participators that would really help this project bloom, React is not only like this popular just because of like one core fact that it's React. Like it's really popular because of like all the libraries that surround it and are made exactly just for React users.
So maybe I kind of lost, but you're saying like if I want a certain button, how would I do something like that within you, right? Like what kind of extra packages are we talking about? Because I do see quite a few over here. I'm just taking a look at the Discord. You have Glue, Malvolio, Requasm. Like what are we talking about for kind of support?
You mentioned Glue. So Glue is like a little bit higher level than Websys. It's like Glue for your JavaScript calls inside Rust. It's a really nice naming. So we use, I love that package that has a lot of good things. It saves time. But by community libraries, I really mean that like we have a lot of them, but they like all might not all have all the features you want. So for example, in our company, we would like to have a component library. So that's, all the buttons, headers, tables, everything is stylized, everything is nice. You just import one thing and put it inside you. And we'll come back to this a little. We kind of will need to rewind a little to fully understand this. But those libraries do not have all the components that like the JavaScript equivalent might have. And they're being worked on. But actually just the base components that you might need, like a button, they are all there. They're nice. And by that, I mean that like, if you use only you can literally write a HTML button. That's going to work all fine. And then you're going to add CSS to it and you're going to stylize it. So that's your custom styling. And sometimes people don't want to work with like CSS. They just want to get some sort of a kit of styling components and just import a component and use it immediately and expect it to work. And UI has its own way of how you're supposed to handle things. So maybe we can back up a little. So one important thing with you is that you are able to write HTML. Like it is done with proc macro. It is a little bit of magic, and behind the scenes it still turns into these like builder calls, But the fact is that you have this nice way of just, writing HTML inside your Rust code. And it's the same way as in React, you have JSX, you can directly write HTML. Also, you have this like nice thing of props. So, every component has its little arguments that like are called props. And when you pass down those props, they are like that. They're like your component is just renders whatever it has to render based on those props. But that's the thing. If you call again that component with like different props, your component is going to update. And that is so nice. That is the core idea of React. It reacts based on what the input is and outputs the HTML you want. And this model is sometimes not really easy to get using simple JavaScript ways of like just, simply connecting event listeners using some sort of a library that like does some HTML generation behind the scene and like maybe is gonna like delete some HTML behind the scene. you need to make sure to always know about that. You need to store that inside your Rust code, Rust state, like literally, like let's say a modal. This is actually going to be a real story. I don't know if I'm actually rambling, but I can wrap it up a little. So here's the story. Like we have a modal, but we used a external JavaScript CSS-like library for that. And what happens when you basically just have a function to call that your modal should open there, you know? And in your application, you probably have no clue if it's like open or not, but you still want to store a Boolean. You want to control it via prop. So what you end up having is just like having a lot of glue code where you listen in on like every single event. Like on close, you're going to set the Boolean to false. On open, you're going to set the Boolean to open. And then reverse of that. If props get passed down and it says true, but previously it was false, then you're supposed to open the modal, you know? And that's a lot of glue code that is really, well, a lot of boilerplate. And instead you could have just written that modal inside of you and it would have worked, you know, perfectly because you would be controlling everything yourself. And that's why having custom libraries is important. Custom component libraries that are written in you.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm starting to think about this. I'm also remembering that you reminds me a lot of Elm. Have you ever played with Elm before?
Yeah, no, I have not played with Elm. I did Google a little just to make sure what that is, and before this podcast. And to answer that, I first have to start off that like U has two syntax options. There are two APIs currently in which way you can write your components. So we have struct components that are a lot like Elm, and like a lot like past React class components. And then we have also functional components, just like React does as well. And Elm is a lot like those class components. You have your view method, and then you have like that messaging handling bit where you can send messages to your own component and it will update based on that. Or their function components are just your good old one function that has ways to hook into state management.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen the functional one. Functional is that a new style that came out recently?
Yeah, that is very new. And I think this like feature is like probably the main feature why I even joined to be a maintainer inside of Vue. Because function components are just like really nice to write. Obviously in Rust, they're like a little bit not that nice because you need to do a lot of cloning, like some boilerplates still happen. But compared to the other way where you like explicitly have to send a message, then if the message, you know, got handled in a certain way, you have to tell that your component has to re-render. Well, in functional components, you're just gonna, you know, if you want, you can literally just have it return HTML, and that's like just one function. But every time props change, your HTML is gonna get updated. So that's already super nice. That's called a pure component. But then inside of it, you can actually write and use a hook. So for example, state hook. And with state hooks, it's really interesting. So you have a setter and a getter, and you get the value. So every time your function gets called, it just gets the currently available state of you know, that thing you are hooking into with use state hook. And that helps you out to render it. But if you call the setter of use state, the same way with props, if like state changes, the same way as props, like if props change, your component is gonna be re-rendered, gonna get updated. So it's really nice. And when it's updating, you know, when you call that hook, it's gonna give you the latest value of the state, and it's gonna update on that. It's so nice.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I just take a look at the RS website. I don't think I see any examples here of what that actually looks like. But that's
if you go inside of
the components section,
concepts, and there are function components. They're really new. They are literally just the latest version, just introduced them. So it might take time for people to get used to it. But with function components, we're hiding a lot of like lifecycle control. And that also also enables us to have more features in them. Currently, they're like feature parity is fine.
The names are very close to React hooks.
I mean, it's literally React hooks, honestly. It's just like,
yeah.
just written in Rust with you know?
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, maybe I have to play around with this. I'm trying to stay away from JavaScript as much as possible. I've been playing around more with Phoenix Live View with this kind of rendering on the server side and shooting updates over the wire, which I think is definitely more interesting.
So what you're probably talking about is it's not a single page app, is it? Like it's like server side, just HTML, and then you have like small bits where you can like send events, right? And then your website is gonna be a little bit dynamic based on that.
The way it works is the first time you render the page, everything will be static. Then you have when you connect with WebSocket, everything gets refreshed, and the WebSocket stays open. And then whenever you have an event, you send the event over the wire using WebSocket. On the back end, you handle that event, and then you update the state. You do the diffing on the back end, so basically like React on the back end. And then you just send a small payload of whatever the difference is. And then there's a patch that happens on the front end. So the JavaScript is really just handling events and sending stuff and receiving stuff over the wire. That's about it for the stuff. The rest of it's done on the back end, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is interesting. So that's one way of doing it, and that's over a lot of calls over the network. With Vue, you're gonna be creating a dynamic page where we currently don't have server-side rendering, so you can't really render on the server and just send the first view already rendered, but it's all dynamic on the front end and client-side rendered. Yeah, but we're working on that.
No, so this is a good question. Like, all right, so you can't do server-side rendering, so that may cause problems for people who turn off JavaScript, let's say, right? You can't at least see some kind of page there. So let's kind of roll back. Like, if I'm somebody who's already versed in JavaScript, I like using Rust. I would not mind to write Rust for the front end, but I need to evaluate, is it worth it, right? Because you're saying, okay, if you're going to be writing a lot of Rust for your backend, it's probably worth it. But like, what else should I consider, right? Because at least to me as a developer, right, I know that there's hundreds of languages out there, right? And I think, I'm a believer that you choose the right language for the right thing for whatever reason, right? So I see the value in using JavaScript for both the front end and the back end. Same thing for Rust front end and back end, but I think there has to be more of a reason than just, oh, it's the same language and it makes things easier. I think that's not a good enough reason. That's my opinion. So I think we differ on this one, which is fine. But is there another good reason that I should really consider to use this, or is there a really good reason why I should? Like, for instance, if it's a very highly interactive website, SPA or something, that I should really consider to look at you if I want to stay in Rustland, something like that. Like, what would be like a really excellent use case for you?
I think a really excellent use case for you. Well, it is just a dynamic website, and
let's put it this way, right? If I'm going to make a pop-up window, is you overkill?
Pop-up window. So by pop-up window, wait, what do you mean? Like, give me more details.
Like a modal, right? So let's say that my client comes to me, they say, hey, I want it when the user scrolls down a third of the page, a modal come up and ask them to subscribe to my MailChimp. I like to use Rust. Is this a good reason for me to use this, or is that overkill?
I think in that case, you're going to be really interested in bundle size because you want it to be fast. I'm not really in a position to tell you how big the bundle size is in you. I don't have much experience with that, but I hear that it's not really that bad. So in that case, it's just really, honestly, like, once again, it's really your preference if you're gonna use like something like, well, I don't know, like that. It's like the same question of like, should I use a framework or should I use just vanilla JavaScript? Well, probably just one single modal with just a couple of inputs. Like, I'm just gonna be realistic. It's probably overkill. Do you even use any framework? You're just fine with a plain old JavaScript. Just one HTML file and just a little bit of JavaScript inside of it, you're going to be fine. But if you're building a big SPA, then for sure you have to evaluate, like, do you want to use JavaScript with like React, and I mean probably TypeScript at that point, and And I think the moment you add TypeScript, you have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? Because TypeScript is not that smart. It's not going to be managing to actually get what the value of a variable is every single time correctly. Also, it's a little bit like shadowing JavaScript. So like if something unexpected magically happens underneath in JavaScript land, in TypeScript, you're still going to be thinking, oh, it's a string because it's written that there's a string, when there's actually suddenly a number and you don't really know why. I think that Rust brings a lot of correctness, and that's why you would consider Rust. So in that case, like you want React, yeah, fine. But do you really want to deal with TypeScript? Yeah, probably not. Do you want to deal with JavaScript and it's like dynamicness? No, probably not. You want to be always have that correctness and only worry about business logic. And that is why U is great, because you can just switch your knowledge from React to U and just use Rust as a base language.
I think that's an excellent way to put it. I like your response, actually. I think that's a pretty good way to put it. Okay. So for you, right? Have you ever worked with you before joining this company, or this is totally new for you when you found this job?
Yeah, it was actually kind of new. So I just quit my React job because at that moment I just quit my React job, and I was already looking into Rust because I was just really interested in going that lower level. I liked C++, but I did not like the errors of C++. So I said like, oh, but Rust looks really nice. And it has all the benefits of like NPM, like cargo is direct replacement for NPM inside of Rust. And I love that. As a past JavaScript developer, that was important to me. Also, the syntax is really similar to TypeScript as well. So I love that. And yeah, so I learned Rust, and when I go find this company, they go like, oh, so well, make this like little application with like a backend and a frontend. And that is when I discovered you. I went like, oh, this looks so nice. It looks a lot like React. I like that. I want to use it. And I think that was when I fell in love with it.
So that's a pretty interesting comment you made. So you kind of got tired of JavaScript. Is that really what burnout was, or was an issue with React because you were like, oh, this looks like React, so I like it. So that means that you already really liked React, but you just didn't like the JavaScript world. Is that kind of the understanding I have?
Yes. I was a little bit sick of JavaScript. Using it in work. So I think that's like another point when you have to like even consider if you want to use Rust or like some sort of like a JavaScript, and that is development speed. So of course you're going to have lower compile times, and you're going to have to spend more time to fiddle with the borrow checker and the type system. But when you're in a work environment, you want that type system, you want that correctness. And if you add TypeScript, it kind of slows down everything already, and it is only partially correct. So what I would do a lot in TypeScript, I remember that like I would check like for null pointers, or like if a value is none, just JavaScript version of that. And I remember, if I remember correctly, if I would put in an if, just that like, is this value none? Do this and like throw an error or something like that. And then after that, it knows that it's not going to be, empty. Then that's fine. But if I do in an if, like where it has some more intricate logic, but small bit of that intricate logic is, still checking for none, TypeScript is not going to get that. And after that, you're like suddenly have to override the value that like, hey, TypeScript, think that this is fine. And I was not happy about that. I wanted TypeScript to be smarter. That's why, in that case, I think Rust solved a lot.
I've actually never played on TypeScript. It's something that I wanted to do at some point, because I get a lot of people coming to me with, they want me to work with them, but they all want to use TypeScript. I never really played with it too much. Is TypeScript really as bad as you say it is?
Well, I mean, if you're comparing it to JavaScript, of course it's way better, because in JavaScript you have no checking for like if you actually are setting a string where it was a number or something like that. Type system is important. And with a time system, you get access to a lot of lints that help you out. I think that Rust just goes one step further and actually helps you even solve even bigger problems that TypeScript might not be able to.
Yeah, because I remember hearing that like basically the engineering behind TypeScript is really, really good. And the fact that they could kind of bolt on this typing system onto JavaScript and you can kind of slowly add it on was kind of a little bit of a marvel. And nobody but a big company like Microsoft could ever pull off something like this because it's just the pure difficult part of it all. So it's interesting to hear like that you say that, because I always hear a lot more positive things than than what you're saying. But I know JavaScript. I know how nasty it could be. Adding types to it, and the fact that you can just slap any onto it is kind of like defeats the purpose of TypeScript, in my opinion.
Having a TypeScript time system on JavaScript defeats the purpose a little. But coming back to that, if you want to ship in a week, go ahead, use JavaScript. I won't blame you. I even will probably adore you. Yeah.
So, like, was there an aha moment for you where you're like, this is really nice. I love this.
Yeah, I think that only happened when I got functional components, because I obviously started using U when that was not a thing. And yeah, the moment I got functional components, I suddenly have all the benefits of that, like, because I loved functional components in React as well. Just the fact that you can just, have everything re-rendering magically. Well, not magically, but, you can predict when it's going to re-render, and you just wrote a one line to have that state saved, and there's like a lot of boilerplate for that. I like that a lot.
Is it like the benefit of having a functional component is that there's just less boilerplate?
That is one of the benefits, yes. Though I have to warn you, we have not yet benchmarked properly the new U version. We're working on that because we have had some like structural updates inside of U project, and that's why we don't really have benchmarks right now. And we expect that like the bundle size at least is a little bit bigger for functional components, because it behind the scenes still gets turned into struct components. It still uses that same API behind the scenes.
But the benefit in this case would just be like less boilerplate for you to write, although in the end you still get kind of similar output, right?
Yeah.
I think I can live with that. That doesn't seem too bad. You did mention before the show that like what you guys are doing with Rust is quite interesting. Like what can you tell us what you're doing with Rust that you think is really interesting? Is it the fact that you guys are sharing components across, or is there something else?
Well, I mean, in general, just like I said, so types, just API types for Rust APIs, that is already a good thing because you have one schema, you have Rust there. Of course, you're going to have a lot of utility functions. I can't really think of really many more places where you would be using same code, because obviously you don't want to, get some sort of too much business logic inside, the front end. It's still going to be always the fact that like most business logic is supposed to stay in the back end. So I don't think you can really share much. You're going to be sharing just the knowledge of the language. You're going to be sharing like just utility functions, simple things like that. And you're going to be sharing some sort of like schema-like thing for REST APIs. So that's just a type system. The models of the things being sent over REST API.
I'm also kind of curious, is you going to always stay in the browser, or do you guys have any plans to make some kind of full-fledged kind of GUI app?
Oh, yeah. This is like an important topic because I think we never got the opportunity to actually explore that. Before the podcast, you actually let me know that you're going to be asking like, why would you choose U as a between other rather than other GUI applications? And I mean, I kind of treat GUI as like a GUI application, like an application that, well, I guess a GUI library. A GUI library is just probably for like native support, and it could be supported in the terminal, in the browser, whatever. With you, you're obviously working with the DOM because you have HTML. There is no like easy way to get rid of that. But knowing that, you kind of have all the benefits of JavaScript and Wasm. So that means that you can use Electron, and you can build your app with Wasm-pack. You can just use Electron, load it there, and you're gonna be having a perfect native application that is written in Rust.
From what I remember, Electron is not the best desktop app. So the best, I don't know. This is what I heard. I never played with it. I'm more into Flutter these days than Electron.
Obviously, it's not native performance, but you get the benefits of HTML and CSS, which is a familiar language for a lot of people. Also, don't forget the fact that like if you write the Electron app, you can, let's say you use Wasm-pack, you pack it up, and you have that little package that you can then, you can wrap it inside Electron, but also you can wrap it as a website, and you suddenly have those both things. Yeah. I actually tried to look into like maybe making mobile apps, but that does not seem like a valid option currently without just like literally loading websites. Though you could try playing around with progressive web apps. So that's, using service workers. And I know for sure it will work, because I kind of done similar things before, and I know you would manage,
It's a good question, actually, because I do know that even though we think we're in a pretty modern age, like not all browsers support everything. Is there anything within you that's maybe not supported within other browsers, especially mobile? Because like I know Apple's quite famous for like not supporting things like PWAs. Not all the PWA support is there, like such as push notifications. They don't support it as far as I can remember. Is there anything within you that people should be aware of that maybe we can always support?
To my knowledge, no. To my knowledge, you has everything that it has to have. And if you're going to end up using something that's not supported, that's going to be probably on you. No, well, I mean you, not the library. Sounds similar.
Yeah, I'd love to hear why we chose the name you, but I don't think you have that knowledge. It's pretty annoying. Oh, it's okay. It's not actually as annoying as I say it is, but
I could
when
guess.
you're talking to people about it, it's a little bit annoying. Why do you guess? What do you guess at least?
My guess is two reasons. One is that Elm is like something nature related, and if you Google Elm, you're gonna get a lot of Elms, So you is the same way nature related, but also don't forget the fact that you sounds a lot like view, and it's a library that helps you, create views. So I think those are two reasons, and even if they are wrong, they are still right in my heart.
Programming libraries always expand my noun vocabulary quite a lot. Like I've never even heard the word you. I thought it was just some weird acronym or something. It turns out it's actually, like you said, something. It's a plant of some sort.
Yeah.
So this is totally new to me. Elm, of course, everyone knows what elm tree is, I think. So I'm quite surprised.
Yeah, that is super nice.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else to ask other than I have a couple of wrap-up questions, unless there's some kind of shout-out you want to do. I do remember you said you have a shout-out. You want more people to kind of help out. Maybe you can be more explicit about what you're looking for and see if anybody else wants to step up to the plate to help out.
So yeah, there's like probably 3 shout-outs. So everyone, please join try it out. And we are always looking for maintainers. The project is, I think it really brings a lot of value. And I don't think it's going to get dropped anytime soon, just because like there are already companies that like use it, like my own company. So we're going to help it out a little, Another shout out, obviously, check out Nikulipe if you're interested in working in Lithuania, Vilnius. We are looking. We have open positions. And since I mentioned Vilnius and Lithuania, anybody that is also from here, check out the Rust in Vilnius meetup. So the last meetup was quite a while ago, but I know that it's gonna recover next year, and there should be a meetup early next year. Yeah, so that's all the shout outs.
So my last couple of questions is, do you have any tips or warnings for people who are beginning in Rust, or even you, that you want to kind of let people know?
Let me consider that for a moment. So I guess my little warning that I keep dealing with for people that actually are gonna use you, don't forget that if you choose to use struct components, you are responsible for the render pipeline. So you are responsible for when your component re-renders, and don't expect it to magically, re-render on itself besides just, props. And this is like the number one thing I'm dealing as a maintainer, and please always consider that when asking questions.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely put you guys go out and check it out. U.rs. The website is yew.rs, and they have a couple of examples that you can go through, some example tutorials. I remember playing with you a few years ago and looked at Prog's book. There was a book about Rust. I can't remember what it's called now. That was my first foray into you, and I thought it was quite interesting. But yeah, definitely check it out. I think it's pretty cool. WebAssembly is getting more and more hot these days. I think a lot more companies are transitioning from traditional desktop-based software into now Wasm software, so they can kind of try to control a little bit more and make sure they make money on their on their licenses. But yeah, anyways, if there's nothing else from your side, then it's great to have you on. Maybe it's good to have you back again to talk more about updates going on with you, because it's kind of like a project. Like I said, I think we first started talking, I said, I thought, it's kind of gone. It's been lull. And you're like, no, it's still going on. Just, still trucking along. So, and that's the reason I also reached out, is because I did see something on Reddit about this. So I sometimes flip through Reddit and I seen that there's an update from you. So I'm good to hear that you're still going around. So, yeah, thanks again for coming on. Yeah, we'll have you back again probably in the future to talk about maybe the next stage. Maybe there's from functional base, maybe it'll be back to struct base. So you guys are tired of functions. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, the next thing is going to be generators.
Yeah, we're fixing the render pipeline for people. Who knows?
Yeah. So thanks for having me. It was real fun here.
Thanks.